Hello, my name is Elspeth Jones. I'm Emerita Professor of the Internationalisation of Higher Education at Leeds Beckett University in the UK, and I want to talk to you today about internationalisation at home. Internationalisation at home is a very important subject, I think, especially in Latin America, where there may be less opportunity for student mobility. And so I think it's a really important topic that we're discussing today. I've got a presentation in 4 parts, and these are the sections. I'm going to be talking about, first of all, why we need internationalisation at home. Secondly, what we mean by it. Third, how we can implement it. And fourth, what are some of the things which can support or block our efforts. Now, in each of these sections, there will be exactly the same question for you, which is really to ask you, what does this mean for your region, Latin America, for example, or for your country, or for your institution? And so it will be important to try to think about the local situation for you in order to really adapt what I'm saying for your situation. So the first part then is, why do we need internationalisation at home? As I mentioned, in some parts of the world it is more important than others. Obviously, if you live in Europe, it's relatively easy for students to cross boundaries and visit other countries and take part in various mobility opportunities, but that may not be the case where you are. And so it's very important for us to look at this in detail. I want to share with you something that is from an article of mine, which is going to be published soon in this book. Actually, it's a chapter. And I think it's important to just think about these points here. Firstly, the world that we live in now is clearly interconnected and globalized. So all students, when they graduate, will be living in a different kind of world from perhaps that we've grown up in and that we've been used to. So that interconnected, globalized world, both as professionals and as citizens, is really important for us to remember. Secondly, especially in universities, the opportunity for us to work together to solve major global problems. And when students graduate, they will be working in these kinds of environments. Therefore, the crossing of boundaries, using our international, intercultural knowledge, intercultural communication skills, and the kind of critical thinking which internationalisation can help to develop, will all be very important. Thirdly, we're also in an era when we need to think about the global responsibility of anything that we do. So the commitment to ethical practice, global responsibility, the environment, and an understanding of cultural others, people that we see as different from themselves, being able to understand them and respect their points of view, regardless of where they come from and regardless of our own background, is going to be absolutely crucial. And so the fourth point here, that higher education offers a relatively safe space for debate. Usually it's an opportunity to challenge ideas and to consider alternative points of view. And so in a higher education environment, we can offer students a safe space to consider these international, intercultural issues. And I believe that we really need to incorporate these factors into the domestic curriculum for all students. So these are just some of the points that I've made here. Obviously, I think there are many others, and you may feel that in your context there are some which are more useful than others. But again, this is something for you to think about as you discuss in your groups later on. Now, traditionally, we've thought about study or mobility experiences abroad as being the solution to internationalisation, or teaching in English, or the presence of international students in the classroom. These are things that we tend to fall back on, thinking that they will solve the issues of internationalisation for our students. But if you think about it carefully, it really isn't necessarily going to work in that way. So very few people around the world have the opportunity to study abroad or to have a mobility experience as part of their university studies. In the European Union is trying to achieve the figure of 20% by 2020, by the year 2020. And so that means that 80% of students, even if they reach that target, 80% of students will not have a study or mobility experience abroad. Going back to my previous slide, which talks about the importance of internationalisation for students, if 80% of the students are not having that mobility experience, then we need to replicate that for them in the local context, i.e. internationalisation at home. Teaching in English is another way that people think they're bringing an international dimension into the classroom. But in fact, if you think about it, if the existing curriculum is simply taught in a different language, then it's not really changing the curriculum. It's not really asking students to think differently about the way they view the world, the way they view other people, the intercultural and international perspectives that we were talking about just now. So simply translating the curriculum into whatever language is not going to be giving a new international view of things. Some other people think that international students in the classroom will automatically give a different perspective for our local students. But that's been shown again and again not to be the case, because if you look in the literature on people who work with international students in the classroom, it's been found that they tend to stay separated from the local population, that the integration of international and domestic students is very, very difficult to achieve. And the literature is full of this kind of information. So we know that it doesn't really work. And none of these three really in itself is the solution to offering an international and intercultural experience for all our students. So I think it's very important to bear these points in mind. I'm going to finish this section by showing you this quote from University World News, which is a very good weekly online newspaper, by the way, if you're interested. Nita Temmerman focuses on, in this article, on how our students will be going forward, the demands on them to be globally aware, international in their outlook, recognising and working with diversity, and having had work and life experiences that allow them to perform internationally, that these pressures, the demands, are going to increase. And so here is another reason why we need to think about internationalisation at home. That's a very, very brief introduction. I'm sure you have your own ideas on why internationalisation at home is important. And so the question for this section of the talk is why, from the perspective of your university, country or region, why we need internationalisation at home. So that's the end of the first section of today's presentation. Thank you very much, and we'll move on to the next one soon.